Hello everyone, my name is SeaTactics for the win of the wise one has been. Welcome back to my Hunter x Hunter series, where I take each arc, I watch them, then I discuss them and upload them to my Patreon page. If you're not watching exclusively on Patreon, that means you're getting the free version. So just so you know, if you support me on Patreon, you get early access to this series, and not only early access, but you get it completely ad-free, along with 1 month early access to OV Awful, which is also completely ad-free, and you get to vote on which anime I watch for the OV Awful series. So consider that. Everything you need to know, links in the description. But let's go ahead and get right into Hunter x Hunter. This is the Heaven's Arena arc, the arc in which Gon and Killua enter to basically earn up enough capital because they're basically completely broke. But it's also important because this is another avenue for our characters to level up, to power up, and get stronger. So this arc actually has a lot of importance into the series, especially later on with the introduction of the Nin ability. But I first want to discuss something, and this is probably the reason you clicked on the video, and that's Gon. This kid is a psycho. Completely a psycho. So in this arc, at one point, he is fighting Rayvelt, I believe is what his name is. He's the guy in the wheelchair. He's the redneck in the wheelchair, as I call him. And to defeat Rayvelt, he jumps on his motorized wheelchair of destruction. He snaps his wrists. I assume he breaks his wrists. With a smile. Gon is the psychopath, my friends. There is no other way around it. And you can go and look in the past episodes and probably find more examples. I'm just now noticing this in like episode 34, but Gon he's crazy. Like he just smiles. He just smiles when he does something to someone, when he hurts someone really badly, and it's creepy. It is so creepy. I don't understand how he gets away with it. But other than that, let's start over from the beginning of this arc, episode 27, Arrival at the Arena. So, Killua and Gon go to the Heaven's Arena, and this thing is big. It's 251 stories, 951 meters tall, which I think is actually a typo on my part. I think it's like 955 or 54 meters tall. It is the world's tallest building in this world, and it looks completely it just overtowers every other thing in that city. And it just, man, it is massive. And we learn that Killua actually fought in this tower before. He got pretty high, actually. He got to floor 200. But it took him 2 years to get to floor 200. And once he reached there, he quit. He didn't continue on because you don't get any prize money once you reach the 200th floor. In fact, once you reach the 200th floor, you're just fighting for glory and pride and to win. And this episode, actually, we get our first glimpse of how strong these characters have gotten, because they enter the arena and they start fighting. And Gon, I don't even think realizes his own power, because he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He just pushes someone, and they go flying off into the stands, or like right below the stands. And that, you know, he wins it by TKO. After we see Gon and Killua just dispose of some of these fools, we get a little bit of an explanation on the floors and how you advance. So how you advance, let's say you start at level 50. You advance by 1 floor each, and if you lose, you go back to the 40s if you start at 50. And also, if you win in the 50s with each floor advancement, you win 50,000 Jenny, you win 1 million at the 100s, and then you win 10 million in the 200s, which is exactly what they need. They're actually going through this whole thing just to get money. But, as we learn later on, it's not really just because they want to get money, it's for leveling up. And Gon, we learn in an episode that Gon loves the thrill of a fight. The reason he does all of this is mostly because when he fights, he gets a thrill that cannot be compared to anything else, which, you know, for Gon, I think that makes sense, because as we've already established at the beginning of this video, he's a freaking psychopath, and he probably just wants to hurt people. We are then introduced to Zushi, and Zushi is kind of a cool character, actually, in this arc. He is training under Wing, and Zushi and Wing are interesting because Wing is teaching Zushi how to use Nin, which is important. It's very important what Nin is. This whole arc is basically a way to introduce Nin while not having your generic, fighting arena arc. This, to me, is quite a compelling arc, just for the simple fact they introduce Nin and its importance into the show, and how I think it will be important going forward. I can just sense that Nin is going to be used in literally every single episode and every single arc going forward, just for the simple fact that they used it in pretty much every episode of this arc once they learned it. It's a very interesting concept, and I think it made the arena arc in this very compelling, at least more compelling than other arena arcs, just for the simple fact that it wasn't really about the fights. It was really about learning other people's Nin and learning other people's how they fight, rather than simply seeing a cool fight. And I thought that was pretty interesting. They focused more on the characters, and I really like that. So Zushi and Killua fight. He knocks down Zushi. Zushi gets back up, and Killua's surprised by this because Zushi is a kid. Not only that, but Killua has been using this one move the whole time. It's just this really backhanded attack to the neck, and it's worked. It's one hit every single person so far, until he got to Zushi, who just keeps getting back up. And that turns out that is because of Zushi's Nin ability. And this is a pretty big thing, because Zushi is a kid, and he uses Nin, and it pretty much blocks off almost most of the vital damage that it did to Zushi. Now, Zushi can't take hits from Killua forever, but he takes multiple hits from Killua, who we've already established can kill people in a split second with ease, with just his hand. So this happening has taught us, the viewer, that Nin is going to be incredibly important moving forward. Just the way they introduce it with Zushi and Killua, it seems incredibly important going forward, and I would not, once again, I have said it multiple times, but I just would not be surprised if Nin is for just always used forever. So, moving on to episode 28, Nin and Nin, we learn exactly what the main points of Nin are, which turns out to be a lie. I will explain this in a moment. But we are introduced to Wing in the prior episode, and initially I actually didn't really like Wing. Not because I thought he was a bad character, I just didn't trust him. He just looked, I don't know, he looked like a Urasawa villain to me, and I was like, oh, Urasawa villains are the best, so he's probably gonna, kill someone with, ease. But no. He's actually a pretty awesome character in this whole arc. He actually doesn't at all, for even a split second, seem like he's shady. It's just, I guess I'm used to characters who look like him being rather shady, rather backhanded, but not really. And of course he does lie initially, because he explains what Nin are, a bunch of points actually. I think 4 points. He starts off with 10, which is focusing your soul into a single point to increase awareness of your ego and goals. And then Zetsu, express yourself in words, and Rin, temper that will, and then Hatsu, act upon that will. Very deep stuff that I'm not even quite sure I understand, to be honest, but that's not even what it really means, as we'll find out later on, because he lied. He straight up lied, and there was one that he kept hidden, which was Force, and we've learned later on there was other ones as well, like Gyo, which is more like an ability than anything else. He tells them that the only way they should be using this is if their souls have matured. And because of all of this conversation they had with the way he described it, Killua thinks Zushi And for the most part, Wing is hiding something. And Wing's right. He didn't teach them Force. He just didn't tell them about it. He actually told them not exactly the whole truth, we'll say that. Which is, I think, to be expected, because Wing then uses Force to turn a small piece of paper into a blade, which he throws, and it cuts into a wall, and it cuts a can in half, which is also Zushi's orange juice, so Zushi got sad. We then reach, so they reach to the 200s, and they go to their rooms, because once they get to 200s, they get their own rooms. And Hisoka will not allow them to enter their rooms, because Hisoka knows they don't know what Nin is. Basically, in a way, Hisoka is saying to them, you can't be up here right now, not because I don't want you to be up here, but because if you come up here without learning Nin, you will be killed. And so, of course, you know, they're learning Nin throughout. We then learn what actually Nin means. Nin is your life energy. Ten is buildup of life energy. It can make your body harder. It can stop the aging process significantly. Not altogether, though, which is pretty interesting. Zetsu, which nullifies your aura. Rin, which creates a strong aura. And so they learn all of that, and they will have to basically have this aura around them and learn how to use Nin, or else in the first rounds of these fights, they're literally going to be crushed, because Wing shows what happens. And what happens is he smashes into a wall and basically crushes the wall. So episode 29 begins, and they must learn Nin by midnight, because Hisoka is in the way, and he will not let them sign up for fights, and the deadline is midnight. Also, they explain Hisoka's Nin really excellently. They explain it as being in a blizzard, completely naked, and not knowing what's going on. Which, later on, when they actually get past it, they actually start to understand what that means. And I thought that was a really nice metaphor to explain what it's like to be within that and not know, without, you know, being a person that doesn't know what Nin is. I thought that was a pretty cool way of explaining it. In fact, the whole way they've explained Nin up till this point, and really this whole arc, has just been a breeze. It was implemented almost beautifully, and I completely understand it just from the initial explanations, really, even though that Wing kind of lied about it and didn't really tell the whole truth. So they learn Nin, and they sign up. They get past Hisoka's thing, and Hisoka basically says they will accept their fights at this point, and that Gon will be fighting Hisoka at some point in this tournament. But the only way for them to actually fight Hisoka is if they win at least one match in the 200s, and then he will fight them there. We go to like a signing up booth, basically, where we learn that in between fights, they will have time to train. Basically, there's months in between time, weeks. So it's not one of those things where it's just one fight right after another. There is time in between these fights. So in the 200s, they basically have to win 10 times to advance the floor. And if they lose 4 before they reach 10 wins, they will be disqualified, which means they will have to start all over. And if they win 10 times, they will be able to challenge the Floor Master, which is, I think, a pretty compelling concept. And not only that, if they beat the Floor Master, then they become the Floor Master. And then they will get to participate in the Battle Olympia. And the champion of the Battle Olympia lies on the very top floor of this crazy 251-story building, which is a pretty cool thing they introduced. Now, it never actually comes into play in this arc. No one in this arc ever actually gets to the top, makes it to a Battle Olympia or anything like that, but I hope it actually comes back into play later on. Maybe they go back through the tournament and they enter the Battle Olympia. But it also makes me think that they will just enter the Battle Olympia anyways without even doing the, going through the floors, because it seems like you can do the Battle Olympia without actually having to participate in the Heavens Arena. Also, Gon and Killua are just talking, and not only are they talking, a bunch of these goons walk up as well, but during this, the reception lady, and I don't know her name, but she is just perplexed at this whole thing. She's trying to explain it, and Gon and Killua are just like, yeah, we just want to fight. We don't really we don't really care about, glory or fame or anything like that. And the receptionist lady is like, what? I'm trying to explain things here, and you don't even care. I thought that was rather cute. A lot of the receptionist ladies, and especially Coco, who is announcing for the fights, is just, they're absolutely hilarious. And so Gon actually doesn't want to wait to fight, so he basically fights pretty much as soon as he can, and Gon, at the end of this episode, we find out that he's fighting Guido. Guido is, honestly, a complete goon, a jobber, as they would say in the wrestling business. This guy is the literal embodiment of a spinning top. He doesn't have any legs. His lower half is the bottom of a top. I mean, that's literally what it is, and it's just, he's such a goofy character design and concept, but it works within this anime because in episode 30, Fierce and Ferocious, we see Gon fight Guido, and Guido is using a bunch of these tops with his nin ability, and Gon gets hit by a couple of them, and he explains that getting hit by one of these things is like getting hit by a hammer at full force, which, what would happen if they never learned nin? Like, he would die instantly. And of course, by the end of this battle, he breaks bones, all of that stuff. But I think what's most interesting about this episode, and by the way, this is the episode where Killua makes the observation that Gon enjoys the thrill of a fight even if he loses. But I think Guido actually wins this fight against Gon, actually. But I think what's most interesting about this episode, because this episode really is a fight and then a small, brief reintroduction to our character, Kurapika. So he goes into this place, he's talking to this girl, and she's like, so you can't see it yet, can you? And there's like this ghost thing, and Kurapika just cannot see it. And so he's not allowed back in wherever he's trying to go, and he passes a guy who follows him into a forest where the guy confronts him and says, you didn't even see me pass you. And he's like, I didn't. He's completely surprised, Kurapika is, because he didn't see him at all. And so Kurapika fights him because he's shot at, and Kurapika didn't even see the bullet, but he could sense it, and that's why he was able to block it. And so they fight, and Kurapika loses, and Kurapika's like, train me. And nin. And so the guy agrees to train Kurapika. Which is, I assume that is how we will get, or that is our explanation for Kurapika and how he'll train. And we don't see him for the rest of this arc. The rest of this arc, he is completely gone, pretty much. Like, he never shows up ever again unless it's in the opening or the ending. So literally just shows up never again within the actual episodes itself. Moving on to episode 31, Destiny and Tenacity. Gon's body is wrecked. He has a bunch of injuries, and because of that, Wing is like, you cannot fight for 2 months. I will not let you fight for 2 months because of what you did. You cannot practice. I think the only thing he can practice is like nin or something like that. They can't even watch the match between Castro and Hisoka. That's how much he's not allowed to. But Gon makes a miraculous recovery because Gon is a psychopath, and he's just been training this whole time to get back to shape, and he was expected to recover in 2 months, but he passed it in 1. So half the time, literally. So we learn in this episode that Castro will be taking on Hisoka, so Killua takes it upon himself to go to Castro's floor, see what this guy's all about, and so he turns on his nin, he goes to basically eavesdrop on Castro, but Castro knows about it because he could sense Killua's strength from the floor below, and if he activated his Nin from the floor below, he probably wouldn't be able to sense him. I think he explains Killua's aura as something that is like really deadly or something like that. We also learn that Castro uses an illusion. He can make multiples of himself, which is a pretty interesting ability, and I wonder what would happen if Castro fought one of I wonder what would happen if he fought Gon or Killua, how that would work out, how they would react to that, because in episode 32 we completely find out what happens when Castro takes on Hisoka. Hisoka basically just destroys Castro. I mean, it's not like, it's not like a one-sided fight or anything. Castro gets a lot of hits in. I think he gets like 6 hits in. But Hisoka the whole time is basically playing him. From the moment the fight started, Hisoka was in control. He uses a lot of clairvoyance. For one, he uses his clairvoyance to make his arm disappear when Castro takes off his arm, like literally uses his Tiger Fist ability, I believe, to take off his arm, to rip off his arm, rather. And he uses clairvoyance to make a bunch of cards, and he's like, guess your card number, or like take your card number and then add 4 to that, multiply it by 2, subtract by 6, divide by 2, and then minus whatever your original card number is. And I'm not sure what that's about, because he then pulls out Castro's card. Castro's card is in his arm. He pulls it out of his arm. It's an ace, and he throws it at him. And it gets blood all over his shirt, or his robes, which help him see through Castro's illusion magic. And from that point on, I think it's pretty much obvious to the viewer that Hisoka has won. And he does. Hisoka wins. Hisoka takes a bunch of cards, and he stabs them into Castro's body. He throws them. They pierce his body in multiple places. His shoulders, his ribs, his thighs. He's done. He's done. He was done before then. Hisoka hits him on the chin, and he can't move. And that's why he is able to throw those cards at him. We also learn about his bungee gum and his love string or whatever. I don't remember what that one's. Or texture surprise. That's what it was called. And then he calls them by 2 names. I think the texture surprise is a different name, or maybe the texture surprise is actually what happens when he. So after the fight ends, he goes back to his room where there's this girl with this pink hair. We don't know her name at this point, but I assume she is indeed somebody's waifu. So put down in the comments if she is your waifu. We get this thing where she basically uses Nin to reattach both of Hisoka's arms, which I thought was just a whole thing of an illusion. I thought he made Castro believe that he ripped off his arms, but he didn't, because Hisoka is Hisoka, and he's crazy. And she reattaches all the arms, and he uses texture surprise to cover up the scars left by the reattachment, which he basically changes the texture of, I think it's like a rag, to match the texture of his skin, which he then gets out of the shower later on, and there's a spider on his back with a number 4. Episode 33 comes around, titled An Impy Threat. Hisoka used In, which I don't exactly remember what that is, even though I watched the episode today. But really this episode is about how a bunch of those goons, the top guy and the wheelchair guy, they basically kidnap Zushi, and they take his shoe, and it doesn't work. Killua basically follows them and takes back Zushi, but Gon doesn't really like that. But what Killua does is he goes to these guys, these complete jobbers, and he's like, you show your face around here again, and I will kill you. You say one word, you move, you breathe, I will kill you. And he's walking back with Zushi on his back, and he's like, man, it is so hard not to kill people. I'm like, come on, Killua. Come on. Can't be that fun to kill people. Killua also learned Gyo in this, which basically you'll be able to see. Well, Killua and Gon and Zushi learn Gyo, which lets them able to see the bungee gum and texture surprise. Well, just the bungee gum, actually, that Hisoka uses. Which is pretty handy because they use it a lot in the Gon fight, and we're getting closer to that fight. But before that, in episode 34, Killua is fighting the wheelchair guy, Rayvelt, and he just completely destroys Rayvelt. Absolutely destroys it. Killua is in control. He sends the guy flying at one point to end the fight, and he lands in his arms, and Killua is just a lightning bolt at this point and completely shocks him. So that was kind of a funny thing there. The next fight is Gon versus Rayfeld, and Gon is using a... No. Guido. Gon for... well, actually, yes. Oh, wait, no, that's later on. Okay. So the next fight is Gon versus Guido. Gon is using his fishing rod, and so he grabs onto it like one of the floor pieces and pulls it up, launches Guido, basically punches the guy like into the ground, and from there he breaks the top or his leg, his one leg, and Gon wins. Next up, he takes on the Rayvelt, who is the redneck wheelchair guy with his big tires, and just destroys him. He jumps on, like I said earlier, jumps onto his wheelchair, snaps his wrists, and shocks him. Well, he doesn't shock him. He almost did. The snake, the ends of it, the snake things bite into him. And Gon's like, switch on! And he, basically what he does is he freaks the guy out. And he just starts foaming at the mouth and he passes out. Episode 35, The True Pass. This is where we get our first glimpse of Hisoka and Gon at the very end. But before that, Gon, Zushi, and Killua, they start to use Hatsu, or learn how to use Hatsu, and they also learn what auras they have, what their category is. Gon is an enhancer, Zushi is a manipulator, and Killua is a transmitter, which, yeah, he very much seems like a transmitter with his lightning capabilities. And so, we go into the fight after we learn all that stuff. They're training basically for the whole time in the middle of this episode. And then, I mean, this fight starts off and Hisoka is talking to Gon. He's so excited he's actually getting turned on. He literally says he is getting turned on. To which I'm not sure if he I'll just say this. Swoon. That's all I'll say. Gon goes immediately after Hisoka because his goal is to literally just punch him in the face and of course win, but his first goal is to just punch him in the face because he said he would. And this whole build up to him actually trying to get him to punch to get him to punch Hisoka is brilliant. But this first just opening bout, this opening bevy of kicks and punches, there's no music playing at all. All you hear, I assume, is just the crowd and the ambience of the arena, and it's beautiful. It is a beautiful scene. One of the coolest scenes so far in this whole show is this initial bevy of punches. And the music doesn't even play until they basically stop trying to freaking punch each other. After Gon stops, that's when the music starts to play again. That's when it starts to slow back down and you get a breather. It's just for that whole opening just bevy. It's just, you can't... you're on the edge of your seat. I haven't experienced anything quite like it in anime. And then episode 36, this whole episode basically is dedicated to this fight. One of my favorite parts in this episode is the whole time Hisoka is basically just using weird magic tricks. At one point, he turns something into a bunch of flowers, I believe, and then cards. It's just, he's really weird. And not only that, but Hisoka has figured out what Gon's secret ability thing, his aura is, just based off his personality. I believe he compares it to like blood types, like personalities based on blood types. He says like it's as rather inaccurate as that is, but he figured it out through that, which it's just insane. Hisoka is incredibly powerful. Gon then gives him his number back, the number 44. He gives it back to Hisoka because they made a promise that he's only ever going to give it back if he can punch him in the face, and he does. Hisoka uses bungee gum to attach his string things to Gon's face, and so he basically, what happens is, a bunch of stuff happens, actually. He first then asks him a question. He says, Gon, which one of these three options is when I attach the bungee gum? The first one was an elbow, the second one was a punch to the face, and the third one was a double-handed, an axe, a double-handed, axe handle, I believe is what it's called, to the back. And Gon picks number 3. It's actually option 4, which is when he was, I think, talking. He pointed, like he was using his hand to talk as like a gesture. And that's when he did it. That's when he attached the bungee gum to his face. Gon then pretty much loses the fight almost immediately after that, because Hisoka uses the bungee gum, propels him forward to Hisoka, who he hits him with a huge punch, knocks him out almost, and the ref is like, one more and you lose. Which is funny because he landed but immediately got up, but the ref took it into his own hands to try and end this fight because he sensed how dangerous it was, how much they were into this fight, and he didn't want either of them to get killed, so he basically ends it early when, well, he doesn't really end it early, but he counts the falls almost immediately once they hit the ground. And so Hisoka has 9 points. Gon has 4 or 6, I believe. And while Gon is arguing with the ref about this thing, he attaches the bungee gum to a piece of rock, and then he activates it, and he says, Gon, turn to your right, and then the rock hits him in the face, and he's like, sorry, I meant your left. And he falls to the ground. He loses. And then we get the interview, and the ref's like, the ref wanted to end it sooner. And then, finally, Gon says, he's talking to Killua, and he's like, I want to go home now. And Killua's like, I'll go home with you too, because I really wanted to hear about this Mito-san. And so it seems the next episode, episode 37, is going to be an episode dedicated to Gon returning home with Killua, which is going to be awesome to see how Mito reacts to Gon's newfound power, how much he's grown up, the hunter license, everything he's been through, because at this point Gon has been through quite a lot. I mean, you don't think about it, but he's been through the hunter exam, he's risked his life in there multiple times. He risked his life to go to the Zoldyck mansion to get back Killua, and now he fought Hisoka, who right now in this anime is the most powerful person. So it will be pretty cool to see him kind of reflect on that, going back and seeing his roots, how he's changed, get a little bit more introduction, more of a development of his hometown. That would be pretty cool, pretty nice. Maybe some extra characters as well. I believe the next arc is the York New City arc, which is going to be 21 episodes. So that's going to be a while. It's going to take me a bit for me to actually watch through all that. So I'm gonna get started on it as soon as I possibly can. I can't promise them they'll be out within a month even. So I don't know when the next the next Hunter x Hunter series episode video podcast will be out. But in the meantime, like I said, I have a Patreon, I have OV Awful, got a bunch of series up, I have tons of stuff on Patreon. So if you're interested in that, the links are in the description, and it supports the channel. It helps me out. All you need to do is back me up the $1 Patreon, and that's more than enough support. If you're not interested, that's fine. You can actually watch these on YouTube and support me through the ads. So with that being said, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.